Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back after Christmas. I seem to have forgotten my glasses somewhere, so there's some vague blurs at the back, but I'm sure I'll recognise you all shortly. Right, so my name's Councillor Dorrington. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. So firstly, a bit of housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please can we evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Please do not attempt to use the lifts. Because of the ice rink, which is now pretty much gone, please can we assemble in a turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the University Park building. And to comply with the Guildhall Trustee Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who's signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today, please. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Everyone speaking will be on camera apart from those sitting to my right. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disturbs the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they wish not to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they're finished. Right, let's go through some introductions. So I will start on my left, that's okay.
Anna Martin, Democratic Service.
Richard Webb, Deputy Director of Finance.
Robert Healy, Education in the Capital and the Children's Education and Finance team.
Oh, hello. We'll go down the front.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hillsey Ward.
Nathan Kane, Deputy Director, Children's Services for Education.
Sarah Daly, Director of Children, Families and Education.
Hi, I'm Mark Jett, Head of Service for Children We Care For.
Jackie Clark, Service Lead for Fostering Support and Home Finding.
Debbie Anderson, Head of School Improvement and Early Years, Head Teacher of the Virtual School and the LA Link Officer for Portsmouth Sacre.
Alison Critchley, Head of Sufficiency and Resources.
Sarah Jetton, School-Based Planning and Finance Officer.
Welcome everyone. Have we got any apologies of absences? Not aware of any, wonderful. That's that one done. And any declaration of members' interest at all? Right, so in that case then, we've got a slight change to proceedings, as I believe, Dave, you've got to nip off for a snooker tournament, is that correct?
If only that were the case.
So yeah, if we can do item 7 first, so that Dave can get away promptly.
Thank you. Those weather warnings and the ferries, because I've got to get back to the Isle of Wight. Thank you. So I'm going through the annual adoption report, 24-25, which covers April 24 to March 25. Thanks for inviting me along. So behind all of these statistics in this report, which you'll have read, obviously there's a child's story, the journey from obviously uncertainty to stability. So I'll walk through the key achievements, challenges and priorities for that particular period and show how Portsmouth continues to sort of lead in adoption. So if we look at the big picture, Portsmouth Adoption Service works in partnership with Adopt South. That's the regional adoption agency, which includes Hampshire, Southampton and the Isle of Wight. The team in Portsmouth focuses on the child's journey from care proceedings to adoption orders, whereas Adopt South recruits, assesses and supports adopters and provides post-adoption support. So we do the children, they do the adults, basically. But together we ensure that children are matched with the right families at the right time with the right support. So the headline achievements, we've seen significant progress in the period covered by the report. In Portsmouth, 26 children were adopted, 36 adoption plans were agreed, 34 placement orders were granted, and all of the Portsmouth children placed were placed with Adopt South families, so we didn't have to go out to other agencies for those families. And crucially, we only had one disruption pre-adoption, so that's a testament really to the matching and support that's been provided. We continue to champion fostering for adoption placements, which, for those that don't know, are placements with adopters, but they're temporarily approved as foster carers, so the child doesn't have to move from one foster placement to an adoptive placement. It's one continuous placement. And there was 30 of those placements across the region in this period, with 6 in Portsmouth. So that's one of the highest in the region, and they're seen as a model of good practice, because doing that reduces trauma for children, reduces the number of moves, and gives them stability from day one, so that the placement that they initially get placed in becomes their adoptive placement. If we look at Adopt South briefly, and the adopter recruitment and journey, 105 new households were approved. Now, the adoptions are in 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 in Adopt South was completed in 1.7 months, an average of 1.7 months. The stage 2 assessments were completed in 3.7 months. But they're both within government targets, and Adopt South is the only regional adoption agency in the country that met both stages within those timescales, so that they're doing really well. And our adopters have the shortest adoption journey nationally, in that it takes 5.5 months on average from beginning to approval for our adopters. So this means children wait less time and families are better prepared. If we look at adoption support and building resilience, adoption doesn't end with the placement of the child. The support that is provided afterwards is vital in ensuring those placements don't break down. So we secured £1.74 million from the Adoption Support Fund during this period to support children and families. We had 735 new support enquiries, that's adoptive families asking for support. We had 31 adopter mentors who were supporting over 100 adoption families. And we run a series of events, workshops and therapy tailored to reducing the trauma and the recovery for adopted children. So Portsmouth families benefit from a localised responsive support service, and that reduces the risk of breakdown and promotes lifelong stability. All that being said, we do still have children who wait and who we have challenges in finding families for them. So despite our successes, we've got to continue to be aspirational for all children. We had 9 children in this period with placement orders who have no identified families. At that point, we couldn't find families for those children. Some of those were sibling groups, some were older children, and some had additional needs, which can make the process of finding families more complex. But obviously we must ensure that adoption is always considered as part of the permanence plan, and that, you know, no children are left behind really. Now, looking ahead to the 25-26, we've got a clear focus. We want to expand our recruitment, especially for harder to place children, because nationally there's a shortage of adopters and it's getting harder and harder to find adopters. We want to strengthen our tracking for permanence so that we can ensure all the decisions made are timely and there's no drift. And we want to enhance our training, particularly on sibling assessments and early permanence. That's training for social workers. So obviously with the continued support of members, we want to ensure that Portsmouth remains a place where children can thrive and families grow in the area of adoption. So that's a brief summary of the report which you've got in front of you.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
No problem.
And I believe we've got a slight latecomer. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm so sorry. My name's Amy Dennis. I'm the private fostering social worker here for the report, which is at the end. I was delayed because of the traffic. It was
That's fine. I think most people are in the city at the current moment. And do you have any declarations of interest at all? No. Wonderful, thank you very much. In that case then, are there any questions? Hello, Russell.
Hello. I always have questions. Obviously, you know, you mentioned about Adopt South being across Hampshire and Southampton, etc., etc. Will the adoption process or dynamic be affected by local government organisation? And if there is elements of it being affected, what have you been looking at to resolve those potential issues?
We're not envisaging there's going to be any major impact, because either in adoption or fostering, because we work closely with our colleagues anyway. So with Adopt South, we work closely with Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Southampton. So that's already happening. We're doing sort of joint initiatives and things. And I'm sure Jackie will talk about fostering. We're part of the South East Hub, which includes 19 local authorities in the surrounding area. So we're running initiatives with Southampton, with Hampshire. So we're already working closely in partnership with authorities in the area. So we're not envisaging, there's probably going to be some small impacts, but the relationship with those authorities since we set up the Regional Adoption Agency and the South East Hub for fostering is much better, and we're doing that joint working every day now.
I suppose the reason I asked this question is because obviously it's partnering also with devolution, and powers obviously transferred more to the mayor and to the local unitaries. So I suppose, do you foresee any financial particular issues? And look at it, because it's the same kind of question I asked.
Yeah.
For all the hundreds of thousands that are watching at home on live stream, we had a pre-meet, kind of like a pre-meeting, talking a little bit about each of these things, and this is one of the questions I asked to the fostering, and I'm just really curious on how, you know, will it be financially supported as normal, or will it actually have an impact with the different unitaries and devolution?
I'll defer to Sarah. That's okay.
I mean, the regional approach to working is very much the direction of travel from the DFE in all of the work that we're doing currently, and you can see that in the work coming out in terms of the broader social care reforms. So we're confident that the maintaining of the regional hub work that we already do, so an example of that is the Regional Adoption Agency in the South East, that will be maintained. Of course, the makeup of that will be slightly different because the shapes of the authority working within there will be different, and we contribute financially in respect of size of authority and numbers of children. So the financial contribution into the adoption agency will be different, reflecting the different sizes that the new authorities will be, but the work will remain the same, and it will be reflected in the local authority grants that we get to do that work.
One more question before you go to your snooker tournament. So you mentioned, you mentioned the stats that you didn't have to go outside Adopt South, but is that quite common? Was it really rare per year when that does happen?
It's not unusual to have to look at nationally for placements, and we have to pay for those. So they're very expensive. They're like £40,000 upwards for a placement. So being able to keep them all in-house is quite cost effective. But in the past, and lots of other local authorities do have to go nationally looking for those placements. So we're quite proud of the fact that we haven't had to do that.
Thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Does anyone else have any further questions or comments at all? So just in summing up then, Dave, as you know, I'm a big fan of the Portsmouth Foster Programme, and I think it's worth acknowledging just how exceptional it is that we are able to keep all of our children in the city close by, where they get an element of comfort from the surroundings that they're used to, from the schools, from their peers, and not adding to any of that trauma that they've already experienced. I also think it's very much worth noting the amount of input and emphasis we're putting on those children that we haven't managed to find placements for, the slightly more challenging ones, and that we're still very focused on finding those. So I note the report and thank you. On that then, we will move over to item 3 on the agenda, and I believe, Sarah, this one's for you, is it?
Hello. Yes, this is for the closure of St Edmunds Inclusion Centre. We've come basically asking if we can move to the formal, or request a formal closure. We have completed all of our statutory consultation periods. We have met with parents and contacted with them. This is very much a good news story for the city, in that we have an inclusion centre that's not being used. There are no staff employed there, and all of our children that have visual impairment and hearing impairments are supported throughout all of our mainstream schools. Within our forecasting, there is no need essentially for this provision due to the advances in technology that we have throughout the city. So we would like to ask for you to do the formal closure. Thank you.
Do the formally bit.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. Does anyone have any questions? No. Superb. Right, let me just get this right. I consider the response to the statutory consultation carried out on the proposed to close the Inclusion Centre at St Edmunds Catholic School, and I authorise the Director of Children, Families and Education to proceed to implement the proposal so that the Inclusion Centre at St Edmunds Catholic School formally closes at midnight on the 31st of August 2026. And now we will move on to item 4, and I believe, Alison, that's you.
It is, thank you. So with this paper, what we're asking for approval to do is to go out to consultation on our revised travel assistance policies. There are 2 policies, one for children of statutory school age, so age 5 to 16, and one for post-16 learners. We are not proposing any changes to the criteria for determining who is eligible for travel assistance, so that would remain the same. But what we want to do is consult on changes to the policy which would affect post-16 learners, where the proposal is that for those learners who are travelling to college, our default offer for those families would be a bus pass or a personal budget, rather than providing travel assistance through a taxi or minibus, which is very much in line with supporting their independence and independent travel, and something that we are keen to do. And part of what we would be doing alongside this is increasing the independent travel training and other support that we offer to families, for example, additional bus passes. So we're asking for approval to go out to consultation on these proposals, for the consultation to run from the 12th of January through to the 27th of February. We will be proactive in this consultation. We'll be writing direct to all the families that receive travel assistance at the moment. We will be highlighting not just to the post-16 learners, but also to the families of learners of secondary age, the proposed change that we're making, so that people understand what it is that we're asking. And then our plan is to return to a meeting in March to bring back the feedback from that consultation with a proposal and recommendation about what we should do with the policies themselves.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
haven't actually got a question, because we asked the same questions before. Just a comment, really, just to state that some of the things that was discussed was when this consultation goes out, this does not mean that, you know, individual one, you know, based on individual, I suppose, applications or needs, you know, if people are still feeling that they will need a taxis for their own mental health, that option will still be there. And if once this consultation goes out, make sure that they comment on that, because I think there will be some that will have different struggles to others, and some will absolutely love this, because I can imagine the freedom, especially with the bus pass. But on the other side of that coin, there will be some that this would be absolutely terrifying for them. So I just want to note, Chair, that basically, you know, if people do have those struggles, they should come forward during this consultation.
Duly noted. Does anyone have any comments on Russell's comment?
Just to emphasise really that this is proper consultation. We do want to hear about the concerns and worries that parents and young people themselves may have, and you know, with the hope that some of those things we will be able to respond to in a positive way by offering additional support. So it really is the start of a dialogue to understand that, and then we will have good time to, if we do go ahead with the changes when the final policy is agreed, to plan with those young people. It's a relatively small cohort who would be in a position of receiving transport in one way at the moment and moving to a different way, and then there'd be Year 11 students coming through. But we know who these young people are and who the families are, so we can look to provide some targeted support.
Wonderful, thank you very much. From a personal note, I think it sounds like quite a good idea to empower young individuals to experience new things, certainly when they're coming towards that age. However, the whole point of going out into consultation is so that people who are actually experiencing that have the opportunity to put their thoughts, feelings and opinions across to us, so that we can take those on board. So with that, I agree to consultation on reserved draft Portsmouth Travel Assistant Policy for children of statutory school age and post-16 learners between Monday the 12th of January and Friday the 27th of February 2026. And I note that the final draft policies will be brought to the Children, Family and Education discussion meeting on the 23rd of March 2026 for approval, with the updated policies to be agreed and published on the Portsmouth City Council website by the 31st of May 2026. Next is number 5, which is the school funding arrangements, and I believe, Richard, this one's yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the progress towards the determination of the school's budget for 26-27 and to obtain the required approvals. Specifically, the report seeks Cabinet Member approval of the final 26-27 mainstream school revenue funding pro forma for submission to the Department for Education by the 22nd of January. Section 5 of the report provides details of the proposed revenue funding formula arrangements for 26-27, and Portsmouth will continue to use the national funding formula for both primary and secondary schools. The proposed values for the funding formula factors are set out in Appendix 2 to the report. It should be noted that only one school in Portsmouth requires additional minimum per pupil funding, and the Portsmouth has also set the MFG, or minimum funding guarantee, at 0%, and this has protected 7 schools within the funding allocations. In terms of affordability, we did agree at the previous decision meeting to apply certain adjustment factors to make sure that the overall funding allocation that was distributed to schools remained affordable within the allocation received by the City Council from central government. Application of the full area cost adjustment was unaffordable this year, and a reduced adjustment has been applied as set out in the report. As explained in the report, in terms of the affordability, the shortfall was mainly driven by the increase in the number of pupils attracting funding through the free school meals, deprivation and low prior attainment factors in the formula this year, and the affordability was addressed through being able to reallocate about 700,000 from the Growth and Falling Roles Fund that wasn't required to be allocated this year, and the remaining £500,000 was met by the reduction in the area cost adjustment. Some other key points on the mainstream funding arrangements to highlight are that there was no new growth funding required for the 26-27 financial year. Existing commitments continue and they can be supported by the previous year's carry forwards, again allowing for that money to be redirected this year. It is proposed that the mainstream schools will continue to de-delegate £11 3 pence per pupil for one of the de-delegation services that was the decision on. And there's also an underspend from the 25-26 schools specific contingency fund that is proposed that it's carry forward again for the same purpose in 26-27 that wasn't used this year. There is a small section around the high needs block and the funding related to that. The proposed high needs budget will be brought to a meeting in February, and that will seek, and to also to Schools Forum to seek the endorsement and approval as required by both forums. And Section 8 also of the report highlights some proposals to amend the number of commissioned places within both special schools and inclusion centres, and that is just doing some adjustments based on the forecast for education of the commissioned places that they require going forward. So that's the main points I wanted to highlight from the report, but happy to take any questions, as I appreciate there's quite a lot in there. So,
wonderful, thank you very much. No? Did you not have a, or are you going to deal with that afterwards?
I'm probably going to deal with that afterwards. I mean, it's a bit of a strange one, but I think, yeah, I will talk about that afterwards. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? In that case then, I approve the proposed changes to the mainstream schools revenue funding arrangement as set out in Section 5 and Appendix 2. I approve the school revenue fund pro forma at Apex 3 for submission to the DFE on the 22nd of January 2026. I approve the use of carry forward on the school's specific contingency for the same purpose in 2026-27 as set out in Section 6. I approve the budget to be held centrally for the payment of central licensed negotiated nationally for all schools by the Secretary of State set out in Section 7. I endorse the use of the 2025-2026 underspend on the Growth Fund for use for the same purpose in 26-27. I endorse the budget to be held centrally, specifically as set out in Appendix 1, Schools Forum Administration. Duties retained by local authorities for all schools, and centrally employed teachers paid and pensions granted. I approve the place number for special schools, inclusion centres and alternative provisions setting as set out in Section 8 and Appendix 4, and I endorse the de-delegation unit values in relation to the school's improvement monitoring and brokerage grant of £11 3 pence for each pupil. Right. Wonderful. No round of applause necessary. Right, we will now move on to item 6, and Debbie, I believe that's one of yours.
Thank you. I'm here to present the SACRE annual report for the academic year 2024-25. So since the Education Reform Act of 1998, all local authorities have been required by law to constitute a SACRE, that is a Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education. SACRE is a unique body set up by the local authority but independent of it, with the role to give advice to that local authority. The main purpose of the annual report is to hold the local authority to account by informing the Secretary of State and key partners what advice SACRE gave the local authority during the year and how the local authority responded to that advice. So our main SACRE has a termly meeting, and those three were held. All three meetings were quorate and occurred in person, interestingly at different venues. Sometimes they're held in place of worship, sometimes they're held in schools or independent venues. So SACRE monitors the provision of RE and collective worship in different ways, looking at schools' Ofsted reports, monitoring of websites, looking at network matings and training opportunities, looking at vacancies for teachers that teach specifically, particularly in secondary, obviously, religious education, and monitoring of collective worship in schools. And all of those activities were undertaken throughout the year. During this year, we have additionally set up visits into schools for members of the SACRE to actually see collective worship in practice, and that's continuing into this academic year as well. In fact, only this week I was in a school with Councillor Swan, and we went to see and share in an act of collective worship in a primary school. This year, SACRE has received no formal complaints about religious education. It's also received no complaints about collective worship in schools, and there have been no requests for determination. That determination, if I explain that, is an exemption from collective worship that is wholly or broadly of a Christian character. If a school chooses to do that, then it has to apply to SACRE. SACRE have to approve it, and that exemption only lasts 5 years, and then it has to be reviewed. Portsmouth SACRE has links with other SACREs and is also a member of NASACRE, which is the National Association for SACREs. And thinking of the councillor's other question linked to LGR, it's actually one of the activities where we do link with Hampshire, in particular Hampshire Inspection and Advisory Service, and our professional RE advisor is the HIAS RE person. So that's a really strong link prior to LGR. So I'd ask that you note the annual report and approve it so that it can be sent to the Secretary of State for Education, and then it can be published on the council website and Portsmouth Education Partnership website for all stakeholders to be able to see.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Russell? No? I just think it's worth noting how important it is for children to have an understanding of all faiths and worships, and I personally believe that creates a better bond of unity, apart from driving a wedge between people at a young age. So duly noted, and thank you.
Thank you.
We've done number 7, so we are now over to number 8, which is the annual fostering report, and Jackie, I believe that's yours.
So I'm here to present a summary of the annual service fostering report for April 24 to March 25, and I'll summarise the key findings, the achievements, developments and the outcomes and the action plan, which, given that we are now in January 2026, I can say that we're already progressing. So our key findings, you'll see from the report that we had 232 fostering households last year, which, considering the last 5 years, we always retain and fostering around 230, which is good. This includes 29 kinship families and 6 fostering for adoption families. In terms of children that we care for, we had 403 children as of the 31st of March. 65% of those were placed with our Portsmouth foster carers, which is a great achievement. 13% of those were placed with independent fostering agency carers, and others would have been elsewhere, i.e. with parents, with children's homes, including our own children's homes. In terms of recruitment, we had 91 inquiries last year. Now, this is a significant downturn for Portsmouth, and you will see from the report that it's the lowest in 5 years. That resulted in 9 new mainstream foster carers and 13 kinship carers approved. That said, for Portsmouth, our retention is strong. So we lose minimum to other agencies, and I think we had 1 transfer last year, but generally our foster carers resign through what we call natural reasons, generally through retirement. Some of our foster carers have been fostering for 20 years or more, so it's generally through retirement, change in personal circumstances, or perhaps family illness. So we're very much focused on our retention of carers, and I'll go through that in a while. In terms of kinship care, so when a child becomes cared for, our first priority always is to focus on returning that child to their parents or their family. With that in mind, we had 69 assessments of family members for our children last year, and of those there were 21 special guardianship orders granted, which means that there were 21 children who are no longer cared for, but they are able to remain legally with their families. That brings us to our current records show that we had 218 children living in Portsmouth under special guardianship arrangements, and for that we have a kinship special guardianship support team, and that also includes access to the adoption and special guardianship support fund, for which there was £41,000 claimed for last year. Each family can gain up to £5,000 for specialist therapy on each application. In terms of our children and where they live with foster carers, 78% of our children lived with the same foster family for more than 2 years. 10% had more than 3 moves, and we know that is one of our issues with some of the children coming into care, that initially they might only be able to stay with carers for a very short period of time, and that is something that we're working on. In terms of our safeguarding role as fostering, we had 29 complaints or allegations made against foster carers by children or other members of the team around the child. Of those, 4 were referred to panel for a review of their approval. That means it was a safeguarding concern that meant that actually we needed to consider whether they were still suitable to be foster carers, and that resulted in 1 set of foster carers being deregistered. For the others, that would have meant that there would be a specific support plan in place and a very close monitoring to make sure they learned from whatever happened to continue to foster. In terms of training, Portsmouth, we have strengthened our training offer to foster carers, but all training starts with the statutory training support and development standards, and all our carers are committed to that, where they have to start their training within 12 months of approval and start it whilst they're being assessed and complete it within 12 months of approval. We have 218 who have completed their training and development support development standards, and we offer workshops, 3 or 4 workshops throughout the year to ensure that all our carers have that opportunity, and that is flexible in terms of online and in person. With that we also offer significant trauma-based training for carers. We start with a lower level and then we progress to, we are rolling out DDP training for our foster carers as well. So our plan is that all our carers will become trauma-informed. In terms of diversity, the majority of our carers are white British, and we do recognise that we need to recruit more global majority carers. So thinking about our retention and our focus on retention, over the last year, Portsmouth has become a foster-friendly employer, which means that there are special dispensations for any employee of Portsmouth City Council should they wish to become a foster carer. We have also enhanced our recommender scheme plan for foster carers, which now means that Portsmouth employees, if they have friend or family member, neighbour, and they want to recommend them, they can let us know and they will get an incentive for doing that. We have seen a massive increase in our inquiries and recommend a scheme already from that. We're rolling out, as I said, the DDP training. Our kinship team is strengthened. We have additional member of staff to manage both the assessments and the support that comes after it. And that means that they have their bespoke training. They have twice monthly special guardianship support meetings held in 2 different places, north and south of the city, so that families can get to them easily. We also offer staying put. A number of our children stay with our carers for a long time, and we recognise that not all youngsters are ready to move out to live independently at the age of 18. So by the time we get to 16, we're already looking at some of those youngsters being able to stay with their foster carers to the age of 21, so that they can develop those independent schools. And as of last year, we had 26 of staying put arrangements, and then we had supported lodgings providers who could offer the next step of support. And whilst we only had 7 of those, we recognised that Portsmouth back then we were only able to provide supported lodgings to 18 to 24-year-olds. That has significantly changed this year as well. We're, in terms of also improving recruitment, we are part of the Local Authority Fostering South East Regional Group, which means we are a part of 19 local authorities across the South East. We are sub-clustered with Hampshire, Southampton and the Isle of Wight. Now, whilst we've not seen a significant increase in inquiries coming forward for fostering, and that is due to a national shortage we recognise as a national issue, which is why the government implemented this scheme. What it has done is enabled us to promote the relationships between our neighbours with Hampshire, Southampton and the Isle of Wight. And to this end, we've already got the statutory skills to foster training, which all prospective foster carers must do. We're already working together where we can collaborate and deliver that across our region, which means carers who may be wanting to look after Portsmouth children, they may not have access to our particular course that time, but we could signpost them to one of our neighbours and vice versa. And we see that as the start of potentially sharing, learning together. So we see that as a positive. In terms of challenges, recruitment, as I said, remains challenging nationally, but we are focusing on our retention. We know we are a small local authority. The feedback from our carers is why they come to Portsmouth is because we're small. We know our children because our children's teams, our fostering teams, we all sit together. We know our children, we know our social workers. And to quote one of our fostering ambassadors, both for Portsmouth and the local Authority South East Regional Group, she came to Portsmouth because we were small, we were a community, and she said small but definitely mighty. So we're building on that. Mockingbird, Portsmouth offers the Mockingbird model of care, which is building small communities of fostering networks where they are led and supported by a hub home carer. We've got 4 of those. That has strengthened our retention. That is also a recruitment draw. People hear about the benefits for children, building relationships with each other, for carers supporting each other, and they want to come and they want to join as part of Mockingbird. We have had a reduction in our complaints and allegations significantly, and I think that is probably due to the amount of support we're able to get in quickly. We identify wobbles that some carers maybe have with children, and we start to support them. We wrap around very quickly. Our training offer exceeds the national minimum standards, and equally we're still building on that. This year we have had carers involved in reviewing the whole training pathway, and they want to be involved in supporting with the delivery of training, and we will be launching that in April. So I've spoken a bit already about the action plans for next year, but it is about, we are co-producing our new recruitment and retention strategy, we're expanding our marketing, incentivising referrals, and we are going to strengthen our engagement with ethnic and faith communities. Placement stability, we've launched an intensive bridging fostering pilot that is to support children who have had significant challenges, perhaps with the family, and then maybe once they've come to be cared for, where carers and a multidisciplinary team is able to wrap around and support that child. We've got that up and running, and actually it's making a real difference to that child and to those carers. And so we're hoping to develop that further in the future. We're looking also to launch a new Mockingbird constellation in 26, and we've already identified the hub home carer. And for foster carers, we know that there's been an issue with some of the finance issues, foster carer expenses. We are going digital, and we're in the process of finalising an online portal for foster carer expenses. We see that as a lead into perhaps developing much more in terms of foster carer supervision records and so on, so that they'll be able to go digitally. And supported lodgings, very pleased to say that in December last year, we received registration for supportive lodging. So that means we now have an alternative accommodation for 16 to 17-year-olds who perhaps don't need foster care but are not quite ready for independence.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Russell?
Yeah, I thought I'd make up for the others by asking more here. Firstly, thank you for the very detailed report. One of my questions previously was to do with local government organisation, but I kind of feel that was answered from the adoption. When I saw this report previously, I kind of went out to some of my residents in my ward and asked, you know, I know some of the fostering parents and carers that obviously are part of this very important system. But one of the things that came up quite a bit, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, was around virtual school. So it basically had dedicated staff who supported looked after children. They were responsible in ensuring the education health care plans, the EHCP, were completed and implemented. And a lot of the carers and parents said it was a fantastic service. But as far as they're aware now, they were all essentially let go last year. And a lot of the foster parents are a bit concerned of who's now doing that job, who's now responsible for the EHCPs, and making sure they're checked and done. And is it part of the 2026 fostering plans that you mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so we had a review of the virtual school, and one of the concerns was that we were funding a very large team, and that was drawing money out of schools that would be benefiting the children in the schools. So what we did was a piece of work looking at what other authorities had in place. We knew we were slightly out of kilter. We also, future thinking, looked at our closer authorities to see the model that they had. As a result of that, we have shifted the approach so that the responsibility for completing the education plans for those children will sit with the social workers, as it does with the majority of local authorities, and they will be supported to complete those. There is still a team of virtual school workers. There is a deputy head, and we have our new head of virtual school, who is Debbie. So it is a change. We don't see there being any impact because the plans will still be completed for all children. There'll still be regular meetings held in processes. We will, of course, be reviewing to hear whether those changes are having a detrimental effect, and we'll be considering that. And we have got some additional staff to cover the initial period because we also have some gaps in resources at this time. So we have probably over-recruited in terms of the school for a period of time whilst we transition. So I'll just let Debbie come in as well.
Before you come in, if you don't mind, because a lot of the parents and the carers I was talking to, were mostly centred around the children, the children that they are fostering that have SEN, and there was one case study where she said if it wasn't for virtual school, it was so beneficial to this individual child who's now an adult that like the idea that that would no longer be there would be so detrimental, because there will be future SEN children that will be in the fostering system that will need that one-to-one that this service gave. So I just thought I'd add that before.
Okay, so I can reassure you there will continue to be oversight of all of the children within the virtual school. What there will be is prioritisation of involvement, so there'll be active lists of the most complex, but that doesn't mean to say that there won't be oversight of all children. What we are developing is much more streamlined processes, and I've had a team planning day all day with the new team today, setting up those and then, you know, a real point of contact, and also making it much easier for social workers to liaise with our education advisors. So those quick, short questions, and also to escalate and to raise those concerns. What we're also considering very carefully is the training that we need to give at different sort of layers, sort of strategic training, face-to-face training, on-the-spot training, lunchtime learning, all of those different sort of aspects, both for foster carers and for social workers, and that to wrap around the children in the same way. So there should not be the gaps. And equally, you know, foster carers could email into that central point of contact at any time and have a conversation, because there will be an active duty desk every single day.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you, Russell. I'd just like to say thank you very much for such an in-depth report, and just make a few comments. It always lights me up when we talk about fostering and fostering in Portsmouth, and something we do very, very well in Portsmouth is we put the child first. We focus on the care of the child, and then we focus on the caregiver of the child. And something I have acknowledged through meeting a lot of the foster carers and through working with many of you guys is that we listen, and when we listen, we take all those points on board and we look at what we need to do to support. So we look at training needs, and we look at wraparound support for those children. We look at extending that support far beyond the statutory requirements to do so. And we really acknowledge the fact that these children, our children, because we are all responsible for them, we are their parents, we really acknowledge the fact that in elements of their life, they have really suffered. However, when they come through this process, they are some of the bravest individuals we have in this city, and they are really remarkable in the way in which they move on. So thank you so much for that report, and I note the report. Right, moving on to number 9, which is the annual private fostering report, and I believe that's Amy.
Oh, it's working.
Oh, you're back in the room.
And I'm summarising the private fostering report for the year 2024 to 2025. A brief reminder that private fostering is when a child under 16 or 18, if they have a disability, is living with someone who does not have parental responsibility or is a close relative for 28 days or more. And in those instances, we have a responsibility as a local authority to support and assess that arrangement while it's in place. So within the year, we received 9 notifications from 5 agencies and 3 of the private foster carers themselves. There were 3 arrangements which had continued from the previous year. So the report is considering 12 children who are living in these arrangements throughout the year, aged 1 to 17. We recorded a decrease in notifications from previous years, from 12 to 9, from speaking with our neighbours and other local authorities from our work with Cor and Bath. This is in line with kind of what they are experiencing in terms of the low notifications of arrangements. Relationship breakdown was noted to be between parent and child was the leading reason for arrangements starting. Half of the children were living with extended family or family friends who had a previous relationship with the child, and half were with someone kind of a little bit more beyond that, boyfriends' parents, friends' parents, etc. The demographic of children remained the same or similar during the year to previous years. So 11 of the 12 children were white British children, 11 children were known to children's social care under child in need or child protection prior to the notification in Portsmouth or in Hampshire or Southampton, and half of the children made their own arrangements as opposed to parents or carers making that for them. Financial challenges remain the same for carers, with no parents financially supporting their children, with the only support carers getting being from universal credit or child benefit if they are eligible to receive that. But despite this, during the year, despite kind of a lot of challenges for these children and these carers, we have successfully achieved a lot of our action plan. We have continued marketing and taken any opportunity that we can to promote awareness of private fostering. We played a key role in Corum's Bath Raising Awareness Day during that year and again this year. We continue to hold briefings to train staff and raise awareness across the city. And we are linked with our colleagues across the UK and locally through 2 different special interest groups, so that we talk specifically regarding everything private fostering. We are learning, we are sharing ideas, and we are comparing, so we know where we sit in terms of kind of what we are managing in Portsmouth. We've continued to give children, parents, carers the opportunity to share their views through feedback forms, to give depth and personal experience to these reports, and also to shape the service we develop and the service these people receive. And the feedback has been largely positive, with people feeling like they're being worked with rather than against, and feeling like they're really helped to understand the process that they are kind of find themselves in. And we hope to do more of the same through 25 to 26 and beyond. Obviously, really important is the intention to raise the profile of these children, trying to ensure that everyone who is entitled to be safeguarded and supported is receiving it, because we don't believe that there are just 9 children living in these arrangements last year. We believe there are more. And thank you, that summarises my report.
Thank you very much. Russell?
I have a question which, obviously, when we had the last meeting about this, you unfortunately you weren't present, so I wouldn't have been able to ask you. One of my questions was the differentiation between obviously private and what's run by the council, councils, and I think I could be wrong, but it was something like basically when it comes to private fostering, they have to be placed within the system within 28 days, is that right? Or was it 42 days? There's a certain threshold. But the question I had when I was told whatever that threshold was what happens if they don't? You know, and who funds that, and how are you supported?
Okay, so the difference between fostering and private fostering is that, and we all joke kind of within our other local authorities as well, that it should never be called private fostering because it just completely confuses everything. But the difference is that these arrangements are made by the families. The local authority has no hand in it whatsoever. So if we did, then we would be effectively by law placing these children, and then they would come under the regulations of fostering, of kinship care, etc. But we don't. So these are arrangements where for example, a child falls out with their parents. It's been very rocky. It's been going on for a while. They fall out with their parents. They're like, we're leaving, and they go and stay with their best friend's parents, and they stay there beyond a month. That's private fostering. Or mum has got significant health issues. She's going in for a long-term hospital stay. She chooses to place her child with a neighbour because she's got no one else, and if that goes beyond 28 days, that's private fostering. So these are arrangements that are made without our knowledge. We need to find out about them as soon as possible after, and that's what we feel like we're not getting those notifications, and we don't believe it's deliberate in the majority of cases. We believe it's people don't know that they have to do that, because what they feel like they're doing is doing a really good turn for someone who is in need. And the majority of these private fostering arrangements and these private foster carers are the most selfless of people, because they are getting nothing in return for what they're doing.
It goes back to the question: how long can that last for? Meaning, let's just say it goes past the 28 days, and then the child wants to, the child wants to stay with that person for another 20 days. What I'm trying to get at, I'm trying to grasp exactly.
There's not a time limit.
Okay.
So the 28 days refers to, so say if you went to, a child went to live with a family friend for 2 weeks, we don't need to know about that. But if they stay there beyond 28 days, then we do. 28 days is the cut off for when we need to know. So if it's a couple of weeks while someone's going on holiday or something like that, that's fine, they can do that. It's beyond that we need to know about it, because then it becomes more of a long-term arrangement. We need to ensure that's safe. We need to ensure that everyone involved in those arrangements is supported, particularly the children, because like I say, all the children within these arrangements this year, none of them have been financially supported by someone with PR. So these carers need a lot of support a lot of the time.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Any further questions or comments? No? I think it's worth acknowledging that there will be certain people in society who, for whatever reason, would rather PCC didn't know that those arrangements were in place. And there is an ethos, certainly within Portsmouth, of nobody likes the grass. So it's trying to break down those barriers and forge a way through, which I believe you guys are doing really rather well at the moment. So once again, I will note that report and thank you for that. I believe that brings us to the end, doesn't it? Well, thank you very much for everyone attending this evening, and I will see you on the next one.